So welcome to our Dynasty Rookie Draft 2020 Round 2. This is Decades of Dominance Fantasy Football Strategy with Sean and Joe. You can see the graphic over here. I'm going to post the people that we took in Round 1. You can pause the video if you want to take a look at who's been taken. We're going to jump right into this. This is going to be a Dynasty Rookie Draft. I'll put the settings over here too. So it's 20 spots. You can see the settings. Pause that if you want to take a look, and that's going to determine a lot of the team needs. And with pick 201, I turn it over to Sean.
Okay, with 201, I'm going to go with Henry Ruggs. I think that he was the third wide receiver in that tier that we were talking about with Rieger and Jefferson. I think he actually has the easiest road to touches of all the rookie wide receivers drafted, and he was the first rookie wide receiver drafted. And I know most people think the Raiders made a mistake, but you know what? What if they didn't? John Gruden drafted him to fill the role that he had planned for Antonio Brown, which was to be the focal point of the offense. So I think Henry Ruggs, you could argue, has the highest ceiling of all the possible rookie wide receivers. So he's definitely worth this pick at the top of the second. Joe?
Yeah, I agree. And I would have taken Ruggs at 112 if I based my pick of Tua on the fact that in a league like this with 20 bench spots or 20 roster spots, it's going to be quarterback needy. So it seemed to me more likely that somebody would need a quarterback and a wide receiver at that spot. But if I was taking a wide receiver, Ruggs would be my guy. And I think the ceiling is real high for him.
Before we move on, real quick, I just wanted to add that a lot of people don't like Derek Carr and the Raiders' offense. That's why they're so down on Ruggs. But the Raiders' offense is actually pretty good. Their defense is horrible. That's why they didn't win a whole lot of games. But their offense is actually like top half of the league. And Derek Carr could be a good quarterback. He's very conservative, but he could be a good quarterback if he actually had receivers to throw to. He hasn't had anybody since Crabtree left town because Cooper was a shell of his former self after that happened. So go ahead, Joe.
No, absolutely. I agree with the pick. So I'll move on to pick 202. I'm going to take Michael Pittman Jr. for the Colts. And just like Ruggs, here's a guy I think now. You got Rivers there. Pittman's going to come in. He's going to slot in right away as the X receiver next to T.Y. Hilton. And I think Rivers is going to see him as a potential end zone target. You're going to get a wide receiver too, probably the first year. And as long as Rivers is there, the first 2 years, you're going to get out of the gate production. Pittman's somebody you could look at in redraft leagues. And then who knows what's going to happen at some point when Rivers retires and moves on. I just think that, he's guaranteed to be on the field for most of the snaps, and he's going to get a lot of targets. He's got talent. He could potentially be the best wide receiver available in this draft. He was picked just at the top of the second round, so almost a first-round pick. I mean, pick 34. Sean?
Yeah, I really wish you'd let him fall one more pick to me because the more I thought about it, the more I actually moved him up and put him in that same tier with Rieger, Jefferson, and Ruggs. And then I have a bit of a gap between them and the next two guys simply because he, again, has a clear path to targets. They drafted Paris Campbell last year to replace T.Y. Hilton. Pittman is not the replacement for Hilton. He's the X receiver, and he's the number one X receiver from the moment they drafted him. They were so excited to get him.
Yep.
Got that clear path to targets, and I'm not worried about when Rivers moves on. I don't think there'll be much of a drop off in quarterback play, whoever they get.
We'll see. You're up at 203.
So at 203, since you swiped the guy that I really wanted, I'm going to take the guy who I thought you were going to take, and that's T. Higgins. This actually, there's two wide receivers who I have ranked really closely here, and I'm surprising myself by going with the guy who's more of a long-term prospect than the guy who might be better in the short run. I do really love T. Higgins' talent. He was drafted 33, first pick of the second round, right before Pittman. He's big. He's definitely drafted to take over for A.J. Green.
Yeah.
And I think that he could form some real good chemistry with Burrow. My big drawback on Higgins, he did have some trouble getting separation in college, but the main thing is the other receivers that are still there in Cincinnati. I think that for some reason, I still think Tyler Boyd is the number one receiver in Cincinnati. I don't think it's A.J. Green. And when Higgins eventually does take over for A.J. Green, I think he's still going to be not the top receiver. I think it's still going to be Boyd. But maybe I'm wrong, because most people don't seem to think that. Joe?
Well, yeah, I'm just going to add that they're just two different types of targets. So just like T. Higgins is 6'4", he's going to be a big red zone target. And, I think Boyd will get more receptions and targets. But, if it develops the chemistry like you think, and you think Burrow is going to be there for time to come, then they develop that end zone chemistry. Red zone targets are worth a lot in fantasy football, so he doesn't have to necessarily, catch 100 balls to be a really solid pick to your team. I'm gonna jump ahead at pick 204 and take the guy that I think you were going to take. You were talking about two guys that you had ranked very, very similar, and that's going to be Denzel Mims with the Jets. I'm probably bigger on Sam Darnold than you. I don't think we've seen what Sam Darnold can do given a whole year. It is still the Jets, but he had mono last year. He's shown flashes where he can be a fantastic quarterback that can air the ball down the field. He's had some really big games. I just like to see what he can do with a whole year, and if he makes really good chemistry with somebody like Mims. So yeah, Mims is my pick at 204. Sean?
That is the guy who I was looking at, and I definitely think he's the right pick for you here. But the reason why I've let Mims last this long, even though he could very easily become the number one receiver for the Jets, is it's the Jets. And it's Sam Darnold, and it's Adam Gase. And to me, none of those are really good things. At least they haven't shown to be good things so far. But I love Mims' talent. The other thing that bothers me about Mims is how far he slid in the NFL draft. And usually when receivers slide in the NFL draft like that, there is some reason for that. So that worries me about Mims. Definitely worth the pick here.
Who do you have at 205?
So at 205, I'm going to go with Laviska Shenault. Maybe a reach in some people's opinion. I think without his injury, he would have definitely been a first-round wide receiver. He's extremely talented. Hopefully he's not going to be a gadget player like some are saying that he's going to be. They're going to try and use him as a running back and all this and that. And gadget players typically don't produce as much in fantasy football. I think he has the talent. As much as I like Chark and super respect what he did last year, I think Shenault is even more talented and could definitely be the wide receiver one on that team in the future.
Joe? Yeah, I agree. My main concern about him, as you said, is maybe you got a gadget player like when you saw Wilson in Miami. He could have a game where he puts up 24 points, but the next week he puts up 3. It's that player that he could turn into that player that he's going to have a great game every week that he's on your bench, and when you finally start him, it's just not there. But he definitely has the talent. I'm not terribly excited about that offense, but I can't argue with the pick. Let's see, that brings us up to 206. So getting to the middle of the second round, the team that took 106 took Joe Burrow. So I want to get my hands on a running back. I'm going to take Zach Moss for Buffalo. Um, Singletary's there. Singletary's young. He's a high draft pick. But I think they have the two of them to be, a running back duo. And if you're picking in the middle of the second round, you have a chance to get a guy who is going to get a lot of touchdowns, could potentially be the more talented of the backs. There's a couple running backs at this spot that I would look at, and they've all got their pros and cons. And I decided to put my money on Zach Moss here. Sean?
Yeah, I actually think he is the more talented of the two Buffalo running backs. I could be wrong. My issue with him is in running backs that are in a timeshare like that, I like to have the one that's going to be getting the receptions, and that's not going to be him. It's going to be Singletary. But
Agreed.
Moss will get the goal line carries. He hasn't, in my opinion, he's not separated himself that much from the other running backs that were left. Plus, with my teams, I went running back for all my teams. That's why I'm more comfortable taking wide receivers for each of them here in the second round. But again, I don't think it's a bad pick.
Who do you have at 207?
So 207, this is the team that took Keyshawn Vaughn in the first round. Hopefully Devonta Freeman doesn't sign there because that would definitely lessen the value of that pick. So they got a running back in the first round. I'm going to take the next receiver, and I think there's a big drop-off at receiver after him, and that's Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk was drafted in the first round by the 49ers, and they moved up to 25 to get him, so that shows how much they wanted him and hopefully how much they have planned for him in the game plan. 49ers offense is surprisingly good, and he's already definitely the second best wide receiver on that team. Very similar player to Debo, all about yards after the catch. So Sanders was able to put up good numbers when he was there. That Ayuk could definitely develop and surpass what Daniel Sanders did. Joe?
Okay, so I would say my issue with Ayuk is that number one target in San Francisco is going to be Kittle. The number two target is Debo. So they're going to run a lot. So he's going to be third on the list in targets. So it's going to be a little bit of a stretch to get good fantasy production out of him, but still a good pick. I mean, I like the pick. I think they picked him up to fill a need that we'll see how it goes. Maybe he comes out and he surpasses Debo for targets. We'll see. So looking at what are we at here? 208. So 108 took CeeDee Lamb. I think with 208, I've got to go with a running back now, and I'm going to take that feedback about getting a running back who's likely to catch some passes and take Antonio Gibson from Washington. I think he's in line to sort of step up into the Thompson role, assuming Bryce Love doesn't step up into that role. So you're going to get hopefully 40 targets, 50 targets, and then some rushing yards as well, and that will let him be a flex running back in PPR. And if you get really lucky, you could have yourself the next Christian McCaffrey, but that would be a stretch. Sean?
Yeah, I love the pick. Definitely would have taken him with the next one. I might have even taken him over Zach Moss, again, because of what you said, because he is going to be that receiving running back. I think at the very least he's going to take the Chris Thompson role and could get even more. I love Geis coming out of college, but I'm hearing a lot of reports out of Washington that Geis is being a real knucklehead. The ageless one, Peterson, has got to slow down at some point. So there's a chance that Gibson could develop into the number one running back in Washington. And again, he's got such a high floor because he could also end up being their slot receiver. and get you those receptions every week. So love the pick, except for the fact that I wish I'd have got him.
Well, it's just a mock draft.
Yeah.
You're up at 209.
So 209, this team took Jerry Jeudy in the first round. So I'm going to go with running back A.J. Dillon. He's the next in this tier, I think. Kind of similar to Zach Moss, was actually drafted ahead of Zach Moss, was drafted earlier. And big bruising running back, definitely going to steal the goal line carries. Not quite sure what he offers as a receiver, if anything, but Jones is scheduled to be a free agent next year. So is Jamal Williams. I think Dillon beats out Jamal Williams for running back 2, like very early in the season. And he could be the only running back left in Green Bay next year.
Right, and if you're picking late in the second round and you have, when you're looking at a running back, you're not going to get someone who's likely to be a first-year every down back. They're already gone. So you have to take these kind of chances. You have to take these kind of swings. And for all those reasons that you said, it's a good swing at this point. Probably not who I would have taken there, but I could definitely see it.
Okay, well, you've got the next pick, so what would you have done?
Well, let's see. At 210, at 110 it was Jalen Reagor, who has got a high ceiling, but may not do a whole lot this year. So, if I want to look at another wide receiver who might also have a potential to break out, maybe be the top receiving target on his team, for the same reason that you liked Ruggs, I'm taking Bryan Edwards. I think Bryan Edwards could potentially get more targets than Ruggs. Maybe not as many explosive downfield targets, but he could end up getting the most targets on that team. It's up in the air. There's all the young receivers there. He's talented. It all really depends on who makes the better connection with Carr. And look at what happened in Washington last year, right? Nobody really thought that. That Scary Terry was going to be the wide receiver 1, and he turned out to be, a top 25 wide receiver. So I'm going to take a flyer on Bryan Edwards and see what happens. Sean?
Yeah, as a Raider fan, when we didn't pick him 80th, I was like, oh man, there's a better wide receiver on the board. And then we took him at the next pick with 81. I was very happy. I definitely think he was the best receiver in the NFL draft on the board at that time. He's going to be battling with Tyrell Williams. And Tyrell Williams was actually very good. Not very good, but he was pretty good in the first part of the season. And then he had an injury and he came back, but he was never quite really the same. So he definitely has that roadblock in front of him for targets, but there is a chance that he could end up being the best receiver on the Raiders. So it's definitely not a bad pick. I understand it. So with the next pick, I'm going to go fairly deep here and get a guy maybe not a lot of people are looking at or may think this is a bit of a reach, but I'm going to take Darrynton Evans from the Tennessee Titans. This team took Justin Jefferson in the first round, so I'd like to get them a running back here in the second. Evans is the definite handcuff to Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry has had a lot of carries last year, so there is a greater likelihood that he'll break down. And there's really no other competition in the backfield in Tennessee for those touches. Evans also complements Henry well in that he is a pass catcher. And if Henry doesn't re-sign in Tennessee next year, maybe Evans is the running back 1 in a terrific rushing offense. Joe?
Yeah, I feel it, and I think there's some room for him. And again, if you're picking late in the second round and you have a chance to get a running back that you can stash on your bench. As you said, if Henry gets hurt, you've got an RB1. Maybe you've got a trade opportunity with the team that has Derrick Henry, or maybe you have Derrick Henry. If I have Derrick Henry, I'm definitely taking him, right, if I have him at this point. So, yeah, for all those reasons, it's a decent pick. And for the last pick of the second round, now in the first round, this team took Tua. So for the last pick, I'm going after another running back that I feel could catch some passes and potentially step into an RB1 role. Supposedly a lot of talent, Anthony McFarland Jr. for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Actually hear a lot of good things about him, other than he's got a similar kind of attitude to Antonio Brown, a little bit of a diva. Who knows? That could be true. That could be untrue. But if you had Antonio Brown on your team for 8 of the last 10 years, you were pretty happy up until about a year ago. So if he's got anywhere near that kind of talent, worthy stash, I think he's going to bump up to probably second running back on the team. He's got a chance. I mean, if Connor's hurt all the time. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, as a Raider fan, I won't even say that veteran wide receiver's name. But McFarland was definitely it was definitely between Evans and McFarland at my last pick, and McFarland's been in the group of running backs that I've been looking at here in the second round. The reason that I took other running backs over him is because of competition there in Pittsburgh. Connor is hurt a lot, but he's actually looking good. I know there have been some workout videos of him posted, and he is a feature back when healthy.
Right.
The other problem is, they also have Snell. They also still have Samuels. I know they're trying to get away from him, but that's why I went Evans over McFarland, because there aren't those other touches there after the main guy in Tennessee like there are in Pittsburgh. But you're right. McFarland could end up being the RB1 in Pittsburgh, especially if Connor has any trouble whatsoever.
Go back to your points about A.J. Dillon for a second, and how a lot of Jones's contract's coming up, and Connor's contract's coming up too. I mean, there's been
That's right. He is on that list of. There's so many running backs that are going to be scheduled to be free agents next year. It's ridiculous. It's
kind of a make or break year for him, and if, let's say, McFarland comes in and really puts it to him, they may just let Connor go. They may not pay him, because that's a position where a lot of teams don't want to pay that top running back money. I mean, look what happened with Dalvin Cook is fighting for a contract right now, and he was a top running back talent in the league. So James Conner, I don't think is anywhere near the level of a Dalvin Cook. So if somebody comes in as a rookie and pushes them, that may be it.
Yeah, I think that McFarland is quite a bit smaller than these other guys we're talking about. So I don't know if even given the opportunity to be a feature back, if he can hold up to that. I think the other running backs we took earlier than that have a better frame to do that.
Sure.
Not saying that there's not a chance McFarland couldn't. I just think it's a little bit less likely.
But you do see it with you've seen what Lindsey's been able to do in Denver. You could go back a few years, look at Sproles, Tariq Cohen in Chicago. There's room for guys like that on a fantasy team. Same reason, and he's comparable in some ways to Antonio Gibson. I mean, there's small guys who can catch the ball and shifty. I like Gibson better, but they're not miles apart to me. I don't know what you think, but that's it for round 2.